Hey everyone! Today we're going to take a look at why, even though it may be very possible to have an hour-long intervention-free drive with the current version of FSD Beta, doesn't necessarily mean it's advisable. This is going to be a topic of discussion, along with some unfortunate regressions I've noticed in this full drive through Concord, California. And don't forget to drop a like if you appreciate me slowly sacrificing my car to science. While Autopilot tries to figure its way out of this parking lot, I want to briefly talk about the overall state of the full self-driving beta, at least in its current version, before the long-awaited version 11 comes out, because I'm going to be going pretty hard on it throughout this video. I feel like there's been some huge regressions, especially with the last few updates, and it's tough for me to believe I'm saying this because I love Autopilot so much, but it's gotten to the point where I've been using it less and less often on my daily drives and almost never use it when someone else is in the car because it can be embarrassing. For me, the performance has gone downhill ever since 10.69, and in this video, you're going to see some, in my opinion, inexcusable behavior considering how far into development the beta is. And it's not the tough scenarios it has trouble with, seems to handle most of those perfectly fine. It's the easy stuff, like using turn signals properly, being in the correct lane for the route, and slowing for obvious speed bumps or obstructions. I have been having some problems with data on my car. You can see a little message on my screen saying it has no connection to the internet, even though we have full bars on LTE, so maybe it's just my car in particular. A little squirrely through the parking lot, but we did make it to the exit here, but you can see we don't quite go far enough to the right, and this Model 3, even though he does have enough room, does not feel comfortable passing us, which I can understand. And after a second of hesitation, it does end up getting out of the parking lot. And I did press the snapshot button here in case the Tesla engineers could use that data to make improvements in the future. After the crosswalk ahead, we do have a pretty clearly marked speed bump that FSD does not slow down for at all. We were only going 15 miles an hour there, which is the speed limit on this side road, so I guess it was okay, but really do wish that the speed bump behavior was a little bit more consistent. I can never know for sure what it's going to slow down for and what it's just going to plow right through, as you saw in the beginning of this video. And speed bumps aren't really the only thing I feel like may have regressed. The turn signals are more wild and random than ever before, even compared to super early versions of the beta, and as you will see during this drive. Some credit for where it's due though, the planner has improved quite a bit. Check out how it's able to smoothly get us through the stop traffic into the turning lane here. This is definitely something that earlier versions of the beta would have not handled quite so smoothly. After this right-hand turn at the yield sign, we have to make an immediate left, so Autopilot has to get over really quick, especially with traffic building up ahead. You can see a little bit of hesitation here, but it does end up getting us all the way over into that left-hand lane pretty early, which was nice, even though it was signaling right while it was doing it. Not the only time we're going to see some weird turn signal shenanigans in this drive. This is also the first video I'm going to be uploading in quite a while that's filmed in the evening time, and it does get quite a bit darker later. Please let me know what you think, if this works or not. I have to force my screen brightness to 100%, which does cause some issues from the interior view, but this actually came out better than I thought. But I'm interested in to hear what you think and if I should continue to do night drives in the future. I'm going to go ahead and slow this next part down. You can see this pedestrian walking up ahead here, and for a second he briefly looks like he's about to walk into the road. He's actually just going around the tree, but he did take a few steps towards the road, and Autopilot calculated that if he continues on that path, there'd be a collision, so we do get an emergency brake here. It corrects itself pretty quickly, and although that was a little bit uncomfortable, I don't really blame Autopilot in this situation. As a human, I probably wouldn't have slowed down because I knew he probably wasn't going to blindly walk into the street, but it's a really tough problem for a computer. Autopilot seemed to err on the side of caution there, which I think was perfectly acceptable. You can see a person to our right who's trying to get out of this parking spot here and get back onto the road. This is definitely a situation where I probably would have given up my right-of-way to let this guy go. But instead, Autopilot randomly turns on a turn signal to change lanes when there are no lanes to change into, and does not give this gentleman the right-of-way. But to be perfectly fair, neither did the person behind us. And although that may have been a tad bit rude, it's way better than confusing drivers around us by randomly turning on turn signals. Like with that left-hand turn signal that you just saw and the one that's about to turn on right now, you'd think we have a left turn in the navigation route coming up really soon, but we don't. It's just randomly turning on the signal. You can see it hunting for that left-hand lane when we have to go straight through this intersection. Then here it turns on the right-hand turn signal when we're, like I said, going straight. The left-hand turn is in the intersection beyond this. And sorry that I sound so upset and serious about this. It's just that it's hard for me to believe that this is still an issue after all this time with development with the beta. It can do so many complex, really amazing things, and it can't get turn signals even remotely close to correct, it just makes it feel way less competent than it actually is. It finally does get a glimpse of the actual left-hand turn, but then sees that the suicide lane that it was getting into closes with double yellow lines, which it is not allowed to go over. So it swerves back into the lane and waits until it can properly get into that left-hand turn lane. Fingers crossed that the version 11 update that's supposed to make the planner be neural network based instead of hard-coded solves a lot of these problems. It's okay that the beta makes mistakes like that, but it's really uncomfortable when it just swerves. I'd much rather have it smoothly go back and forth like a human would, or even just continue on its original planned path, as long as it's safe to do so and doesn't obstruct traffic. I know I've been going pretty hard on the beta here for every single mistake, but I just feel like these weren't issues before. A lot of these just weren't issues until these latest dot updates. And it's extra confusing to me that I see everybody else's performance seems to be improving. So let me know what you think. It does do a pretty nice job negotiating with this car ahead. You can see on the planned path it was planning to give it the right-of-way until they pulled over and gave us the right-of-way instead, and autopilot takes it, which was pretty nice. And again, those are one of those things that are actually fairly hard to figure out, and that new drivers struggle with quite a bit. But you know what new drivers don't struggle with? Turn signals. Autopilot seems to be getting better and better at the hard stuff and worse at the easy stuff. Here's another great example. We have a left to make at this light and then an immediate right after. And you can see it gets into the rightmost left-hand turning lane. I would consider this a pretty advanced move and shows that autopilot is planning pretty far ahead, which makes the mistakes, the really simple mistakes it's making, even more frustrating to me. And like I mentioned in the beginning of this video, I don't know how much of this has to do with my specific car with these issues that I've been having with data, especially when I see other YouTubers who have said that the performance seems to be getting better and better with every single dot update. It almost just feels like there's been some logic that's just been deleted from my car. And it doesn't necessarily feel like it should be data related, but who knows, maybe it is. And in a second, we're gonna put autopilot into an unfair situation and kind of show you what I mean. While sitting in this left turn lane, I decide to change the navigation route because going left here ends up at a dead end. Just look how long it's taking in order to reroute this navigation route. This used to happen almost instantly for me, but now it's like every single change that I do, anything that has to do with data, takes forever. After about 20 seconds, the car finally reroutes, which has us going straight through this stoplight, and the one time I'd really like a turn signal, it's not on. Does give a little flick of the turn signal at the very end there, but too little too late in my opinion. The person going by us right now had to slow down quite a bit to make sure we weren't doing anything crazy, and I do not blame him one bit. I think it's a good time to remind everybody that my hands are always on the steering wheel, ready to take over at a moment's notice if the car does anything too wild, and I also am responsible for the car's behavior at all times. Whenever I'm driving alone and not recording a video, I will always take over pretty early, but I do think it's interesting to see how the car does when nobody is there to take over eventually, because that's what the goal is, right? And to be fair, this has been a completely intervention-free drive so far, even though it has struggled a bit here and there. So I guess credit for where it's due again. This new navigation route does have us briefly entering the freeway, but just for a moment. We get off at the first exit. You can see it actually does a really nice job at these metering lights. I thought the metering lights were going to trip it up, especially with it being green with the car in front of us, but it actually behaves really nicely. And you will see in a moment the visualizations change to the highway stack of autopilot, which is basically just navigate on autopilot. This is hopefully what's going away with version 11. Got a few cars merging ahead, which I think autopilot actually handles pretty appropriately. The person who does not handle this appropriately is this SUV in front of us. You can see traffic is stopped and he just blocks the entire lane. Nobody can move behind us. We have people going around all these cars, off on the shoulder. This is the type of stuff that creates a ton of traffic and why I don't really feel that bad when autopilot takes a second to correct itself, because humans are on the road already doing much, much worse. What's that you say? I haven't been complaining enough about the turn signals? Well, don't you worry, because as autopilot has its right turn signal on, left turn signal on, right turn signal on, we're supposed to actually be going straight through this intersection. Like, what could it possibly be thinking right now? Here we go again, left turn signal, right turn signal. At this point, I honestly think I'd feel better if turn signals were disabled altogether. Like, then it would just drive more human-like. And after confusing nearly everybody in this intersection, it does eventually figure out what we're supposed to be doing and gets us through. Doesn't slow down for this kind of inverted speed bump there. You can see the SUV in front of us did the same thing, but we have a lot less ground clearance. In the last Tesla AI day, we saw that the car is in fact very capable of understanding the ground surface and seeing when there's unexpected bumps on the road and stuff. And it makes me wonder, why isn't that here yet? Even this inverted speed bump up here, we have a sign, bump 15 miles an hour, and the car doesn't slow at all. That inverted speed bump looked like it had a lot of scrapes on the ground from other people going through there too quickly, so decided to disengage and slow it down on that one. If only I would have done that later in this drive. Something a little odd happens when this light turns green. The person who arrives in the left-hand turning lane in front of us doesn't seem to realize that we have the right-of-way and starts moving into the intersection. Autopilot had that car highlighted in blue, which I believe means it's predicting their path, but there was not much of a reaction there at all. And obviously goes without saying that I was ready to take over. I would not have let a collision happen there. It almost makes me wonder what would have happened if they actually cut us off though. Like, I think autopilot would have reacted. I've had it react in worse scenarios than that. But it's just, it's interesting to me, where it seemed like everything was correct there. It had the correct car highlighted. It knew kind of what to expect in that intersection. At least it seemed like it. Everything was displayed properly, but it just didn't take the right action quick enough. And I've heard other beta testers complain about this as well. All right, here it comes. Trust me, this speed bump is a lot worse than it looks. Ouch. My poor, poor GLaDOS. The reason I didn't disengage is because it actually did slow down, just like for this speed bump, but that other one back there was just massive, even way worse than the one that we just ran over. Going to continue fast forwarding through these neighborhood areas, although it's doing some pretty impressive stuff here. Like, there's no ground markings or anything for it to go by, and its ability to predict cars far away is really impressive. It's been doing good in areas like this for quite a while, so I'll just continue fast forwarding to the more interesting parts as usual. One area where I do have to give it credit again is these unprotected left turns. We have seen some massive improvements in performance on these. You can see the creep wall is exactly where it should be. Inches itself out and starts the maneuver early before the last car passes. Really well done. Gotta give a shout out to Chuck Cook for that one. Without his persistence, I don't think those turns would be anything like they are now. Maybe once they fix the turn signals, I'll be in the release notes. After this right turn, we have to make an immediate left, which means getting all the way over into that left-hand lane on this 4-lane road. You can see autopilot handles this a bit robotically, just changing one lane at a time, but it does get us over there, which was actually, I think, pretty impressive. I think it did a pretty good job there. I think in the future, I'd probably like to see that be treated as one single maneuver, especially when there's no traffic like there was during that time, where it just kind of moves over because it has to get over so immediately. But in that case, the slow robotic behavior kind of worked out. At least it's faster than it used to be. It's also kind of hard to see because it's so dark, but there's not a lot of ground markings here. They're kind of just those reflective flaps placed on the ground with temporary markings, and autopilot's driving really, really well and really smoothly. It kind of throws me for a loop sometimes, where I think autopilot may not be able to handle something very well, and I'm expecting the worst, and it impresses me, and also vice versa, when something that's very simple, or seemingly simple, and it struggles quite a bit, so who knows. Autopilot does a great job with the turn signals in this intersection by not using them. We are supposed to be going straight, but occasionally it'll put on a turn signal since it's kind of a sweeping turn. You can see as we stop, a creeping line shows up behind us. The car kind of gets stuck here for a moment. I have no idea what that was all about. I didn't hit the snapshot button because I figured I'd hit it enough and I don't want all the clips to be erased, but yeah, that was a little bit weird. And guess what? We are approaching the very last navigation point where my camera started to die, and you're still here with me. And for that, I thank you. In summary, it's tough to summarize. Autopilot can be amazingly good, and it can also be amazingly bad. I understand that there's going to be some regressions in some areas whenever they make changes. Oh god, the turn signal's just there to piss me off, I swear. Anyways, I understand that there's going to be regressions, but I think we should be beyond this driving 101 stuff with like turn signals and basic stuff. So, curious to hear what you guys have to say in the comments. I do read them all, so let me know. And until next time, bye.